If you ruled the world, what would you change about the world? Now, this is an interesting question if, you know, you have no power. But even if you do, um, that is interesting. Like, how would you get better at what you're doing? And I personally would be a president. No, I wouldn't be a president because we live in a man's world and being a president is a primarily masculine role. I don't want to be worshipped as a woman. I don't want to be idolized. I just want to be heard. You know what I mean? I do not even want to be seen at this point of my life. Like, I would be glad if I could make money without appearances. But, I mean, by making money, I mean make ends meet, like make a living, which usually happens after you invest a lot in your passion. So, um, I just hope people realize that women are smart. Like, they are extremely wise more often than not. And even when they appear to be dumb or anything like that, they still have like a baseline level of wisdom that most men, I believe, actually lack because they are men. And it's not, at the expense of men and them saying this. It's literally just my experience that women can talk so intuitively, even they will not notice. But the words that they use, they will speak from the heart. And on the other hand, men are less emotionally attuned to their environment, but they are more focused, they're more, in a way, simple. And that also can be an advantage. For example, they can stop thinking. Women cannot do that. So our brains work differently. But what I'm trying to get to is there is value in the leadership of both sexes, in my opinion. Like, we are, you know, both more respected if we look healthy, if we look good, if we represent ourselves with more than just words. But women are especially valued for their beauty and appearance. And for some reason, this is culturally or societally very common because women traditionally always represented health and new life. And, new life requires health, a state of health. And since they are directly connected to source, which is, God, or like, you know, the non-spiritual, so to speak, um, I truly believe that women's appearance will never go undervalued because like it is the first thing that people see and pick up on. Like, it's the first thing that shows. And honestly, without a person even opening their mouth, it's obvious. But after someone starts talking, that's where things become either dull or interesting, regardless of their appearance. And so, non good looking people also have a chance at like getting to a better state than where they were socially and societally. But needless to say, someone who has both good looks and good appearance, healthy appearance, and an ability to use their mind, those people are usually more recognized, or more sustained in their social esteem. But the reason I personally did not choose to put my face up front over my words in a way is because I want to teach people, I want to show people that appearances are not everything, and I know I do have the potential to like attract a lot of people using my appearance. I just wasn't raised in a way where I was kind of acclimatized or familiarized with a lot of influence, and I do not, first of all, feel comfortable um, being praised for my appearance alone, assuming some people do not understand my message, or they twist my words because of what I look. And second of all, I just kind of respect people. I feel like this way because if I could change the world, I would literally erase media that does not extend to sharing wisdom and sharing actual scientific evidence-based knowledge, either one or the other, because um, you can talk nonsense, like you can do that, you can you have the ability to talk about nothing and still be listened to. Like that is part of your human power. It is using your words in a way that you want. And that's one thing. Like I have once looked up, should we delete the internet because of my obsession with um like a simple life in a way. But it was at the time when I realized, like, I personally have had experience with technology that I was not prepared for. And so I would perhaps at times, at moments, be more peaceful, not having to think about that, rather than using technology for all types of purposes without consideration or boundaries. Um, and this happened when, my ex or whatever partner, I don't want to label him, but, you know, a person I knew intimately, he also was going through something on the internet. And that's when I made my search, should we delete the internet? Because, like, I am a Gen Z. I am not proud of this, but I know I have had a childhood, meaning I grew up without the internet until the age of 10, 11. And I was 10 when I first got um my first smartphone, and that's when I started going on YouTube, watching movies, like, doing things that kids do that make sense and make sense to them specifically. And um, following your parents' footsteps, I had no boundaries around technology. I had no boundaries around what I consumed, and it did turn into something very addictive. And that's when I wanted to raise awareness about it's people, especially young people, are consuming media so much these days. They are like changing their bodies, their epigenetics, and it's extreme in my opinion. Of course there are exceptions, like people who are raised well, people who are being raised well, people who are given guidelines around using technology, and people who have boundaries in general. Those are the exceptions. Like most people no longer go to community or church, they just go online and that's it. And I think that's literally unacceptable. Like if I was to rule the world, I'm not sure I would punish anyone outright for going online and things like that, but I sure would regulate internet usage globally. And I would also regulate like how and who can access the internet, because the internet is the biggest tool right now that anyone can use. Just look at ChatGPT. He calculates for you. He does your homework for you. He writes instead of you. He writes your dates, poems instead of you. He creates images you can upload. He creates content in general that you can make money with. So it's like, where is the point of human creation? And the second thing I want to change about the world is like healthcare in general. Like, I would separate women's and men's healthcare, because women and men have completely different bodies, and they are completely reliant and dependent on their own way of being and way of functioning as like the two genders. And hormonally we are built totally differently, and our brains are totally different. So it is not that women should be forbidden things like running marathons, for example, as it had once been in history, or fasting, as some women today would do. Instead, I would suggest educating ourselves about our bodies, so that we do not walk around in the dark without like guidance as to what's right and what's wrong. Because when it comes to the female body, when it comes to a woman, it's very specific what is right and what is wrong at what times, and not others. So for men it's different, because men cycle daily, so they are much simple and easier to understand in that regard. But most statistics nowadays that exist are based on male groups of candidates that applied to be researched or accepted, being part of a research group, or basically men are still the basis for scientific research, and men's bodies are still more researched than women's bodies, to a staggering degree. Like, it's exaggerated, and women are not represented in science whatsoever. And so that's very misleading to anyone who's a woman who wants to be taken care of by medicine or by modern healthcare. And I find this outrageous, because even though most nutritional advice, for example, applies to both genders equally, because we evolved in similar environments that allowed us to kind of more or less consume the same types of foods. When it comes to investigating the human body itself, when it comes to healing specific parts of the body using the container of the whole body and the system of the body, it is just different how we can do that with regards to each gender. And even when it comes to timelines, women have monthly periods, and they finish a cycle over a month. So that is, I think, really unique compared to what we might have been used to when it comes to like looking at a person as someone who cycles daily and operates the same every day, feels the same every day, has the predictable hormonal patterns of a day every day. And I do think it's unfair that we disregard this as like the most important part of our society's health. Another thing I would change about the world is having young women more protected slash less overprotected. Um, the reason I wouldn't necessarily apply this to men, even though, I wouldn't exclude them either, is because we live in a man's world, and the way society is currently structured, again, starting from science all the way through education, even to family creation, everything favors men's biological clock, which is very long. Like, you know, um, needless to say, men also need to maintain their health, but for women, nothing in society is built in their favor. So it is because of this that we need to pay especially a lot of attention to young women and what they go through, because they are the ones, I think, the least people hear out. And what I mean by this is people do not realize how, for example, postpartum can wear on a woman after giving birth. But when it happens, it tends to like affect a woman so much, she realizes, perhaps for the first time in her life, how important self-awareness and like emotionally safe environment actually is. And maybe she realizes she never had that in her lifetime. Like, for example, even if she is with a secure partner, even if she's financially, safe, secure, and things like that, she could still go through all the emotional roller coasters of womanhood, especially, around family building. And this is because women are more than just tools for reproduction. Women are feeling beings. They are not robots. They are very deep emotionally, and they need a lot of understanding from both men and women. And so the way we treat young women will have the most impact over how those women will end up behaving as adults, and how they will treat other women and men. And I think going beyond protecting a woman's innocence, just respecting her as an adult, no matter what she looks like, is the second most important step. And instead of overprotecting her, we could focus on letting her use her wings very early on. The same way we let men, fly out the nest. But when they come back, not punish them for coming back, or not, suggest to them, or not coerce them that they shouldn't be there. That's what I'm trying to say. The greatest power a person can have with the power or the tool of listening is staying silent, because presence is what makes us irreplaceable. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, like, how can I be irreplaceable if I am not even saying a word? That's the thing. Your beliefs, your ability to understand, that is irreplaceable. You are irreplaceable. When you give attention to someone, that is irreplaceable. When you pay attention to something, that is irreplaceable, without talking back. You know what I mean? And when you emphasize that you have no idea what another person is going through, because you know, you may be thinking, you keep an open mind. You may not understand it all. You are not in Source's perspective. You are not God's perspective. That enhances the connection rather than breaks it. So, presence instead of coercion. That's another thing. Yet another thing I would change about the world, if I ruled it, is, and I want to repeat, like I want to emphasize, none of these points suggest I want to erase patriarchy or, any social extreme. I never suggested that, you know. I do not want to create matriarchy. I just want to create some type of equality between the sexes. Does not suggest that the two are the same, because they are equal, but they are not the same. Another thing is, I mean, there are a lot of things, but these are the main things. Healthcare, the way we treat young women especially, and just in general, technology usage and boundaries around each other and technology. And I would also want to, live in a community, because as a woman, I don't now feel safe in this world, even by a man anymore. Raising a child by myself or by my parents, that is just not an option to me. In my vocabulary, grandparents no longer exist, because maybe I will be a grandparent one day, but I wouldn't care if my grandchild would never see me in his life or her lifetime, because I wouldn't worry about them. If they show up, if their parents are allow their child to see me, okay, fine, I will see them. I will be a good grandparent then, perhaps, but I wouldn't run after that child the same way parents run after their children usually, to protect them and things like that. This is what I'm trying to say. Let's focus on the main thing right now, which is parenthood. I don't think the reason why children who spend more time with their grandparents are less depressed is because grandparents are more important than other parents beyond one's own birth parents, but because we need each other in general, and there is no such thing as one family that rules the world, or you know what I mean, there is no such thing as one family that limits itself to itself. Um we wouldn't even evolve if we never had been exposed to opposition or difference or diversity. And multiple families can share multiple ideas or perspectives that maybe even grandparents cannot provide with, because exposing a child to different ages of people or groups of people is important, because they see into different life stages and what's possible within them. But since society is already going so fast and changing so fast, I don't think that's the most important thing right now, especially with the disappearing shadow tribe, if you know what I mean, because of individualism, but rather just kind of expanding laterally, expanding in the other direction. Rather than going for age, I would go for networking and just parents having more social ties and a greater social network that also generates them, perhaps income or health, wealth. But most importantly, the children will have a choice. Or I'm not talking about parents who are super privileged and they go to church every week, and they take their kids, and they arrange like birthday parties for their kids, and their kids actually have no choice but to stay with their parents. I'm talking about the ultra rare exception of parents who actually give upper hand to other adult human beings to raise their kids, and for more than just a few weeks at a time or a few months at a time, but for a very long time. And I mean, for as long as the parents even have the potential of staying together. You know what I mean? That's the rare exception I'm talking about. I'm not talking about kind of, I'm sorry for the expression, but curated communal style of gathering regularly on demand. I'm talking about kind of this out of control way of trusting strangers that, you know, have as much autonomy in our child's life as the parents themselves. And I know this could be like extremely, unprecedented for a lot of people or even unheard of. It is possible. Like, we evolved in this way. Like, we normalized the two-parent household, but it's not conducive to human health to live in this way in the long run. Like, not for children when they're expected, and if they're expected to all of a sudden turn into adults at a certain age. And then, what do? They may fly out the nest all of a sudden and then come back. And then they kind of, revert back to a childlike state. And then the whole thing collapses on them. Like, that's not sustainable. What is sustainable is a child who has values, that is not just based on two people's perspective who actually are from the opposite sex also. Hence, they may complement each other personally, but they do not cover all of humanity's values. Like, even just providing with one extra perspective, like even just providing a child with one extra perspective within any gender that they can look up to, gives such a, a well-based security in their thinking that, they will need to rely on that as adults to, maintain critical and analytical thinking. So that's the last thing I would change about the world, is how we raise kids, and just in general how we live, like how independent we are and why. Because, you know as of now, I would absolutely consider getting into an intimate relationship and things like that for selfish purposes. But when it comes to having a child, I would be so reserved to do that in this, couple based context, because my, active lifestyle that would perhaps accommodate for, you know, a life made for two, so to speak, would not, favor more adults. Like, I want to feel as an adult, I want to enjoy being an adult. I do like to enjoy capitalism at times, and I do want to feel responsible in that way. I do want to give back to the world. But when I focus all my energy on doing these things, how could I possibly remain someone who feels respected if I sacrifice my whole, body, my mind, my even my emotions, honestly, in the name of I'm sorry, but codependence, like in the name of, having a family. Like, I understand both paternity and motherhood and fatherhood as well are very meaningful because they will always remain in society as long as there is human on earth. But there is like a quality to these roles that can be enhanced, in my opinion. And just because something cannot be erased from existence unless existence itself is erased, that doesn't mean that we cannot change or affect the way that those things operate. And I'm talking more than just self-development. I'm talking human families connecting. And okay, one last thing as a bonus. I want to change people's education and the education people get around money. Because, for example, when it comes to spending money, one could, spend money on themselves, on their appearance, on their health. They could spend money on experience, on attending events, on going to places that they've never seen before to expand their horizons. They could also gain education, or they could invest in stocks, buy land, not clothes, stocks or land. They could gain work experience. And I know it may sound counterintuitive that, you know, you cannot build a business without money, but it's true. Like, work experience can be gained both by being an employee and working for yourself in a way. But, building a business is a huge investment. Like, it takes a lot of courage, a lot of initiative, a lot of perseverance, a lot of tenacity, and a lot of bravery. Like, a lot of masculine energy, and a lot of not giving up. So that is an investment. On the other hand, gaining regular, so to speak, 9 to 5 work experience also, looks good on your CV, and that's the end of the sentence. Like, experience of any kind, anything that you gain in life that is done differently than by, scrolling on social media essentially, or eating food, or, you know, chatting with your dog, can be extremely valuable to the workplace, to the work, force, sorry, to future employers, to your future family, everyone involved, and it will increase your value, your earned value. And you can also, again, spend money on education. But education is like a broad topic, so I'm not just referring to earning credentials that people approve of as papers that refer to how much but also education that is not globally recognized necessarily, but enhances your research abilities, your skills of research, your interest in your field, your approach to life, your refinement, how you represent yourself, how you carry yourself, how you treat other people, how kind you are to other people, um, you know, the words you can say them, what words you know you should not say them, and when, things like that. um, and of course health. So just in general, getting educated differently, I believe, would be a huge shift in society structure. Because, like, I do believe men provide a steady structure for so many people and groups of people and people in institutions. And, since we live in a men's world, we see a lot of that, because men build schools, they, run hospitals, they run communities, they run uh, churches, they lead churches, they preach, they in the they are in politics, they are in the media, they create the world, they build houses, they protect women physically. um, but what I do not see a lot of is emotional security in men, and in a way where it's like as global as their physical expansion, like, and their physical uh, willingness to expand, like, their willingness to expand physically, and their reproducibility physically. Like, I do believe men have potential, but I am starting to believe as well that some things men will never understand emotionally about even themselves or women. And I do want to maintain faith that women will be understood by men emotionally, even when women cannot understand themselves. But I also know that women have such a level of wisdom to repeat that is based on ancestral knowledge and, even muscle memory. It is irreplaceable. And what men will not, put that on paper necessarily first and foremost, but it doesn't mean that it is not part of humanity's collective awareness and consciousness. And so just, putting a little more emphasis on the importance of self-awareness and social intelligence, and just in general emotional intelligence, yes, at the expense of maybe, certain scientific evolvement, like development for women specifically, or for a certain age of people, a certain demographic of people who belong to a certain age. um, because not everyone could be interested in, physics all the time for the rest of their lives, but everyone who survives high school knows that they will depend on skills such as social intelligence, networking, emotional intelligence, politics, financial education and awareness, nutrition, science, healthcare, and, how people's bodies work in general. um, how to move the body the right way. So it's, more than just physical education, how to move and rest the body, how to, you know, care for the body without overexhausting it, um, or being athletes, how to, you know, stay active well into someone's, elderly years, without, you know, messing up joints and things like that. Um, so there's a lot to just, staying alive. And I do believe that the more people get educated about that, the easier life will become to all. And I do believe that at some point we should at least postpone forcing all scientific subjects onto all people who are, most receptive and just, yeah, um, open-minded around new ideas and integrating and adapting new ideas, such as young adults or teenagers, because, you know, I love science. Like, I love physics, I love metaphysics, I love maths. At one point in middle school, I actually was a straight A student in maths, and I got a recognized name among all the school's teachers because of my straight A year. And I love logical thinking. I love grammar, which is not as much a creative part of language, but like a very structured one. I love, building. Like, I once tinkered a bike basket for myself when I became a bicycle courier in the capital during winter, to not have to, put the bag on my back. Um, but I love, like, putting things together. I love evidence. Like, I love physical evidence, So I do know how important science is, and how important these quote unquote materialistic or material subjects are. Like, I do believe they are one of the things that make us people, like human beings. Like, they facilitate thinking often to such a degree that provides a critical thinking that none other could, I believe. So, I'm not sure how to replace these subjects immediately with, more soft skill oriented subjects, but I do know that there are just skills in life that I believe the average person does not get educated about the same way that they learn how to write, read, and, you know, um, just use human language, for example, because those things, one day, only the very privileged could learn. And now everybody reads, everybody writes, but we seem to almost have taken that for granted. And then we added on top of it all some science that just, is a bit like irrespective of our social needs, like our need for physical touch, for example. And it's like, why? Like, I need a little bit less evidence to get my physical needs met sometimes, you know what I mean?